Thanks so much for staying with Africa News Network First Fast Live, and good evening to you if you've just joined us. Now, 15 months after the release of the State of Capture report, President Jacob Zuma announced the establishment of a judicial commission to look into the matter. A public protector, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, has backed the decision to broaden the probe, but her predecessor, Advocate Thuli Madonsela, is not convinced. And here's more.
Multiple legal and political battles later, a judicial commission has finally been announced into State of Capture. President Jacob Zuma observed the matter could not have waited any longer. Others say it is already too late.
The allegations that the state has been wrestled out of the hands of its real owners, the people of South Africa, is of paramount importance and are therefore deserving of finality and certainty. Accordingly, I have decided that while the issues determined by the order require final determination by a higher court, this matter cannot wait any longer.
The commission was due 2 years ago when the whistleblowing was done, and there was also an opportunity to establish it immediately after my report.
It's late, but it's better than never. What I would like to see happen is that the terms of reference are managed correctly.
The president has widened the scope of the inquiry and addressed the issue of lack of resources cited by the previous public protector, Thuli Madonsela. But the author of the State of Capture report is not happy.
Anybody who has rendered the state dysfunctional through capturing it needs to be investigated, but not by this commission.
The public protector issued a statement to say she calls upon the president to ensure that the deputy chief justice has the power to expand.
Any form of state capture, corporate capture, corruption has got to be dealt with.
The exact terms of reference for the commission's probe have not been announced, but going by President Zuma's warning in Parliament, a lot of skeletons may come tumbling out of the closet.
If there are people, and there are, who have come to say corruption started long before 1994 on the wealth of the state, on the properties of the state. So those who are calling for it are going to regret.
As all sides seek to make political capital out of the decision, the spotlight will now be on Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, the man who has been officially assigned to do the digging. Bureau Report, ANN7.
I'm joined via Skype by Richard Chumali, legal strategist, Jackie Shandu, political analyst, live in studio, and we'll later have Professor Beri Hanyane, political analyst and a professor with the University of the Northwest. We'll start with you, Mr. Chumali. Thanks so much for your time, and whether the extension of the terms of reference for the state capture inquiry has put a spanner in the works, or whether this is a moral opportunity that we have to really deal with state capture in its entirety.
Well, we're all walking through the dark here because it's not it's something unprecedented, and a lot of shouting is going about judicial overreach. We seem to think that it's going to be a case of the Deputy Chief Justice is going to have to make a call, and from there we'll be able to see whether it's challenged or not. But as it stands, I suspect that the president's done the only thing he can do. It seems his hands are tied unless he wants to undermine the judiciary.
But as it stands now, of course, it's devoid of details. Professor Beri Hanyane, what is the inquiry then likely to uncover if it were to be adopted in its more extended format? Professor Hanyane, can you hear me? All right, Richard, you can pick up on that one, on what this inquiry will uncover beyond, the Gupta leaks and what's been in the public discourse.
Well, actually, it's relatively limited to that. The notion is that the public protector was asked to investigate a very particular set of circumstances, uncovered certain allegations, but never actually put them forward as findings. And in order to maintain the sacredness of division of, well, what we would call the separation of powers, the public protector rather said, instead of me making these findings, I'm going to pass the buck onto someone more competent, and that is the choice of the president in terms of a selected pool of people, and in this case, the Deputy Chief Justice. So we don't know. I mean, the public protector has just said, these are the things that I've uncovered, which is the Gupta leaks, aspects relating to potential mismanagement of funds, and it's up to somebody else to do a further inquiry into this. So the door is completely open.
Yeah, okay, please stay on the line with us, Mr. Chumali. Jackie Shandu, your response, and pick up on what this is likely to uncover, and whether there is merit in ignoring the broader corporate SA corruption and focusing on the state of capture report initially and then moving on.
Good evening, Cindy. Good evening to the viewers of NN7. Of course, we warmly welcome the announcement by the President of a broadened state capture investigation, because we must remind everyone that the initial conceptualization of this notion of state capture was very narrow and self-serving. In fact, it was a work of white capital using their newfound allies in the form of the EFF to target the person of the President Jacob Zuma and the Gupta family. That was the initial intention. Now, there is this unintended consequence, and it's interesting. The current public protector issues a statement saying, President, we welcome, we must dig deep all the way to the bottom of the rot, and whoever is found wanting must be exposed as such. The former public protector says, confine it to what I said it should be, which then in many ways reveals, if we want to know what is the state of private sector corruption and them using their power, financial muscle, to also unlawfully and unethically influence elected decision makers, why would we want to confine it to a particular person or a particular group of persons?
Yes.
Why wouldn't want to say, let's see how far the road goes?
Let's get that from a legal strategist as well, Richard, in the sense that there has been so much more evidence uncovered. If you look at the reports from the Competition Commission, there had been the Integrated Financial Management System, the evergreen contracts at Eskom, SAA, etc. That can we then afford to say we're going to be rigid and stay with the terms of reference as per the state of capture report, or whether we should rather do a clean sweep to get to the root of state capture in its entirety?
But even more exciting are all the documents that have been uncovered in the president. And through discovery, a lot of these documents have been unearthed. So it's going to take a bit of time. But if they want to do a broad state capture report that encompasses the aspects and the terms of reference put out by the public protector, then that's all encompassing and broad, and it's well within the realms and the powers of the president and the commission to do so. So I think it would be in the interests of the public, as well as in the interests of society and broader South Africa, to be able to have a broader investigation, as long as the investigation doesn't get so broad that it gets derailed from an investigation at all.
Okay, I believe we're back with Professor Berihanyane, professor with the University of the Northwest. Good to have you, and thanks so much for joining us. Are there concerns that this broader approach could dilute the focus of what the intention of the state of capture report was?
Good evening, Cindy. Good evening to your viewers. Look, much will depend on how the Deputy Chief Justice, the Chief Justice, and all other role players will put on the table as terms of references. And this is important in the wake of the fact that we have an appeal or two that the President would want to present to court again in relation to the judgment on this matter. So it will be interesting going forward as to what period is covered, most importantly, if it's broadened to include pre-apartheid period as well as post-apartheid period. The question is, do we have enough resources and capacity to cover that broader stage of the investigation? So one would have to wait and see what are the terms of references and begin to question the timing and the scope thereof.
Yeah, but are you saying it's wasteful or essential? Because former erstwhile public protector advocate Thuli Madonsela saying her brief, as per the complaints from the opposition and the DA in particular, was specifically to look at Jacob Zuma, his proximity to the Gupta family, and whatever other business interests mutually so needed to be investigated. Are you of the view that it would be a wasteful exercise in expanding the probe?
I wouldn't subscribe to that on the basis that there is enough capacity. What we have as an advantage here is that Parliament has begun the process. It will be interesting to not to ignore what the Parliamentary Committee on the same issue has done thus far. To what extent have they uncovered things that we never thought fell within the ambit of state capture investigation? So again, it's an investigation. We don't know what permutations are likely to come during the investigation, which may very well begin to challenge whatever terms of references that are there on the table. So much of the content will have to come once the preliminary, if you want to call it that way, the preliminary terms of references are on the table and the process has begun.
All right, Jackie Shandu, your view in that it is a necessity and it's essential regardless of perhaps the timelines or whether it will stretch, even across budgetary constraints. What is your view that we need to implement it in its broader application as opposed to the confined one?
Anything and everything that can be done to uncover the extent to which white monopoly capital exercises undue influence on elected public representatives must be done soon. We must look into Eskom, the undue influence of Exxaro, of Anglo Gold, of BHP Billiton, right, the big four. In terms of these contracts that they have, we've known for quite some time. A ton of coal, you look into the international commodity markets, they tell you a ton of coal costs 500 rands. And there are these contracts that are pre-94 that say that these four companies, white, racist, old companies, apartheid companies, have a fixed price of more than 1,000 rands per ton of coal. And then we wonder, how come Eskom needs bailout? You move to SAA, it's the same thing. You look at the salaries of the pilots. Almost all of them are white, the second most expensive in the world. You look into the business, into the corporations that do business with SAA, white companies, Bidvest, you go into Transnet, they have been taking money, masses of money away from SOEs. We speak about state capture. We should begin even with state-owned enterprises. Who has been taking all this revenue that has caused the very same state-owned enterprises to go back to government and say, we need bailouts? And when that happens, what do white liberals, white racists say? It's the incompetence of black leadership and would not make us go through and see that actually it's these old racist colonial agreements that are continue to being honored. State capture report must investigate who are those executives in these state-owned enterprises that have played along with these illegal, unethical agreements with white monopoly capital to take money that should be going to servicing black people.
Yeah, Mr. Chumali, do you think that, again, this can uncover a lot more in dealing with the rot of corruption as opposed to having a myopic view on President Zuma as a person and his business dealings, that indeed there will be consequences and or unintended for that matter for those who have been benefiting to a larger degree on state resources? Hi, Richard. Okay, we'll get back to Richard. Berihanyane, your view. I mean, we've heard President Zuma making that remark that there will be consequences for those who've been calling for the inquiry. What do you think may be some of the issues that could come up in this broader investigation?
Look, Cindy, the taste is in the pudding. I wish there were a number of cases thus far that shows indeed that the security agencies as well as the prosecutorial authority in this country can stand out and be proud of, in a sense, giving us a feel that we have confidence towards these agencies. We don't have that much. Had we had some track record in this area, one would feel going forward that indeed those who have been found wanting will have to account and indeed will have to face the might of the law. So that I'm worried about the track record. If indeed this process leads us to that, then we'll see some sense of legitimacy in the entire process.
All right, I believe Mr. Chumali is back with us. If you can hear me, in whether the broader investigation is more essential, because it would then include the state of capture report and the investigation or probe by Advocate Thuli Madonsela. Is it more essential in your view that we implement the process as it's, with the proposed expansion of the terms of reference, or whether we should start in bite sizes, start with the state of capture report and build on from there?
Well, we find ourselves in a unique situation because the broader public would like to see the broader report and the broader investigation done. But the mechanics of the public protector are that you receive a complaint and then you investigate that particular complaint, which is why the initial report only required the constricted investigation. Assuming that the resources are there, I would love to see the broader report. My fear is that I don't think that the resources are there. I would love to see a broader investigation, but if we have to do it bite size, I would love to get it done.
Yeah, before we get a response from Jackie, just very quickly, I mean, there had been the SAIEX report and the ABSA apartheid bailout Bancorp report in the public protector's list of investigations to do, but that wasn't necessarily vented out as much as we've seen with the state of capture report. So what are you saying that, should we still focus on only the state of capture whilst there had been various other complaints in her list of things to do?
I think it's definite that we should stick with the state of capture. What we do around the state of capture report and investigation should be left up to the resources at our disposal. But according to the mechanics of the public protector and the legal system, it's important that that itself gets done. I would love to see the broader investigation done, and I hope that it does get done. But if it derails this current investigation, then it defies the function of the mechanics of the legal system.
Your response, Jackie?
You see, Richard's response is typical of a bourgeois legal scholar. You can't go, let me make this analogy. You can't go to a physician based on your suspicion that you have a flu or a headache. And then you go and then you are diagnosed. And then the physician says, look, actually, there is more damage. There is more illness. You are suffering from cancer and all these other things.
So you can't take an aspirin.
And your response is to say, no, actually, I came here to investigate my headache that I had or the flu. This is the logic. We want to know. We don't want to have these inquiries every now and then. We want a once-off comprehensive investigation that tells us that even, I'm saying, let's start from 1994, because apartheid, by its nature, design, and operation, was corruption. So you can't investigate apartheid corruption. By nature, by definition, it was corruption. Colonialism prior to that. That's why apartheid and colonialism were declared crimes against humanity by the United Nations. So it just becomes so illogical to say we want to investigate apartheid. Apartheid was a white racist colonial dictatorship, that anything that derived from that was illegal, was corrupt. Leave that. We must say, come 94, new page, new era, advent of constitutional democracy in South Africa. What happens? Who from those leaders? Of course, it started off on a very concerning note. Saul Kesner buying Mandela housing and all these things. There's the arms deal, there's the bread price fixing scandals, there is the construction cartel. There is a bottomless rot of white monopoly capitalists micromanaging remote controlling our supposed leaders in the political space. That is the kind and the nature and the extent of investigation that we want conducted. That who has betrayed us? We as the public, having elected them to lead this country towards decolonization, transformation, and economic liberation of black people, but have partnered, connived, fraternized with the same people that have been oppressing us prior to 1994. Yeah. That's what we want to know.
Professor Perihanyane, you of the agreement as well that the allegations of other financial, or rather financial institutions being manipulated and essentially controlled, such as the South African Reserve Bank Financial Intelligence Center, the PIC, etc., that this broader investigation will then give us a clearer picture of truly who is benefiting from state loot.
Yeah, but Cindy, we've got to do it in a very intelligent way. Let us not forget that institutions such as the Treasury, for years and in other countries, have enjoyed some sense of independence. And already we have a sub judice case in front of the courts where the Treasury wants to ensure that nobody touches the independence of the Treasury. I don't want to go into the nitty-gritties of whether rationally that is good or bad. I will leave that to the courts to decide to what extent does Treasury enjoy independence or not. What is critical for me is to take this somewhat of a short-term wait-and-see approach. What are the terms of references of this state capture investigation? Where does it take us? Those who are in the forefront of investigation should surely give us some direction. Where do we start? I don't think we'll entertain the idea of an end to this investigation. Quite rightly, we need a broader approach, but what is important is that there are credible terms of references on the table to work on.
All right, Professor Perihanyane, a political analyst and a professor with the University of the Northwest. Thank you indeed for your time, much appreciated. And Richard Chumali, just with Professor Hanyane saying, of course, we await the details at the moment. It's a little bit devoid, but we need to still look at state capture in its broader terms. Otherwise, we will be perpetuating the status quo and also perpetuating inequality and the white monopoly capital and the privilege that they enjoy. What's your view?
Well, Cindy, I mean, allow me to extend on the analogy your previous guest made. If you're sick and you go to a physician, let's assume you're very, very sick. You need a heart, you need a liver, you need a kidney. You go to the physician says, yes, I have a heart, I have a liver to give you, but I don't have a kidney. And this is the philosophical debate now. On the one hand, you say, okay, well, let's give you the heart and the liver so long and we wait for the kidney when it arrives. And on the other hand, we just say, well, we can't give you the kidney, so we're not going to give you the heart and the liver either. And that's the case here. Do we go all out? And yes, we do if we can. And then it becomes a question of can we? Or do we do what we're supposed to do now and then do the rest when the time comes? And understandably, the current discourse in our country is that we want to get everything done. We want to do a broad sweep.
Yeah, but I think, Richard, also, I mean, this particular patient has been almost flatlining for the past 23 years. We told about the ANC government adopting a bankrupt state. So I think we've gotten to the point where it has to be fixed from head to toe as opposed to waiting for one organ or the other to operate optimally.
Are you asking me? Oh,
no, it's just a comment I made.
I agree. I mean, Cindy, we must do as much as we can as soon as we can do it. Whether we can do an extended what's the word, research, I would be glad to see. I'm not convinced that we have the capacity for that, given how incapacitated all our research organs are. But if we can, let's do it. Let's do the massive investigation.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Richard Chumali, legal strategist. We'll close it off with your comments or closing remarks, Jackie.
Sure. No, it's simple. Because of the historical formation of the state in South Africa, white interest, white people, white capital have always been holy cows that can be studied, can be investigated, can be interrogated, can be scrutinized, can be held to account. Unfortunately, you have a very weak government of the ANC, which maintain that sort of outlook in 94 and beyond. And so white people still operate from that premise that they are beyond the reach of public scrutiny and accountability. And that is why when they cooked this thing and gave it to Julius, they said to him, confine it to the EFF, to the Guptas and Zuma alone. And some of us who were still in the EFF, we said, no. Actually, we say here in the EFF, we subscribe to Marx and Lenin. 1848, the fundamental premise of the Communist Manifesto says, by definition, a capitalist state is a captured state, where those who manage it on behalf of the bourgeois. So this formulation is intellectually superficial. It does not hold waters. And we went on to say, let's look at the amount of business that the state does with the main players in this country. How much of it does it do with the Guptas? It didn't even come to 1%. The bulk of state revenue, state business, goes to white monopoly capital. Those are the people who hold the state by the proverbial, I won't say what. So that's,
I think we have a clear picture.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
No, and don't squeeze those proverbial, you know what. Thank you so much, Jackie Shandu, joining us in studio, and you at home. Thank you for watching. We're back after the short break.